Right, a warm welcome to the History Show here on Uxbridge FM. And we are welcoming today a photographer, Toby Van De Velde.
Hello.
Hi, Toby.
Hi.
Now, tell us a little bit about yourself. First of all, I know you were a staff photographer on the Uxbridge Gazette for quite a number of years, but also you've got a little bit of a hobby which is becoming rather engrossing, old analogue film cameras. Yeah, tell us about your life on the Uxbridge Gazette, first of all.
I came to the Uxbridge Gazette in 2002 and I stayed until 2014. So 13 years I was shooting for newspapers. I lived in Hayes and then Uxbridge as well, so I lived local and worked local.
Yeah.
And it was just, in the main, a fascinating and very nice way to earn my living.
I bet, yeah. Are there any sort of major events that happened in Uxbridge during your time on the paper?
I did photograph the Queen on several occasions. Ooh. She visited the then newly completed sports complex up in just off Park Road.
Yeah.
I photographed her doing the tour around there. I had the Royal Rota for that, which means I was one of 4 members of the press who had access to the tour. 2 photographers, a newspaper journalist and a radio reporter. And so we had the intimate access, whereas most of the other members of the press were just held at the boundary of the event.
Yeah.
With minimal access. That's very exciting to do that. It's very intimate access. You don't get to interact with a royal. I've shot several royals. You don't get to interact with a royal when you're doing the ticket. You just photograph the event and make sure you don't get too close. I've seen photographers getting physically hauled out of a room and chucked out if they've done something to upset the royal press officer.
Oh dear.
But yes, so you're in there getting the intimate shots. The rest of the press pack don't get that access, but you then, once you finish the job, you then have to make all your pictures, as a photographer, pictures available to anybody who wants them. That's one of the duties of the photographer gets the Royal Rota is to make sure that every other news agency who wants those images gets them, and free of charge as well.
So there's downsides as well, and that your paper can't earn any money from them.
Well, like I say, that's one of the responsibilities of the Royal Rota.
Yeah. So I guess you'd have had the Olympics pass by as well, the flame through Uxbridge in that time?
Very close to where we sit now, actually, when the London Olympics were on.
Yeah.
The torch came up Windsor Street, past the Market Hall, past the Uxbridge Station, up past the Civic Centre, and then off up the Uxbridge Road. And I photographed the length of that, I just described, Windsor Street up to the Civic Centre, and that's where my access ended.
Yeah.
But it was, I've got to say, I've done a lot of events in Uxbridge Town. Big Fest, for example.
Oh yes, forgot about that.
Long lamented Big Fest. That was always a really great way to spend an afternoon at work. I've photographed many events in Uxbridge Town, and the Olympic torch, I've got to say, was the busiest and the best atmosphere I've ever experienced in Uxbridge. If you were there on that day, I hope you'd agree, it was just...
I think we were stood down by the swimming pool as a family watching. I forget who was holding the torch at the time. I think it was one of the cricketers who were going into the cricket club. Can't remember his name, but yeah, I remember seeing him. That was a great day. Yeah,
I've got to say the torch as it came through Uxbridge Town has got to be a highlight of my working life as a photographer. Definitely, the atmosphere was just second to none.
Yeah,
it was a fantastic time.
So back in the sort of 2000s, what's a day in the life like as a staff photographer on a newspaper? I mean, you're covering what sort of area at that point?
In the early 2000s, I worked specifically for the Uxbridge Gazette, and so I covered the borough of Hillingdon.
Yeah.
I didn't go any wider than that. There was a newsroom made up of the editor, deputy editor, chief reporter, and then 3 reporters.
Okay.
And then there was myself and my chief photographer, whose name is Chris Berry, or what is, yes. Yeah, Chris Berry was my chief. And the working day would be get to the office about 10 to 9, switch your computer on, oil the kettle, and then look in the diary to see what's coming up for the day.
Yeah.
The jobs between the two of us would be divided out. Who wants to go to the north of the borough? Who wants to go to the south of the borough?
Oh, I see, yeah.
So if you fancied Hayes or Harlington, or if you fancied Eastcote or Ruislip or Ickenham, you'd, yes, Chris and I would divide the jobs up into 2, and then we'd set out.
So a lot of jobs, I suppose, would be like, I don't know, with the mayor or something, or with a school, or...
They got to the point where, with the best will in the world, your worship, I've met a lot of mayors in the last 20 years, and they got to a point where an editorial decision was made that we've had the mayor a little bit too often.
Quite a lot,
we did try and avoid photographing the mayor at some point. Sometimes there'd be 3 different mayoral pictures in the same edition of the newspaper. So we just thought that it was a bit mayor heavy.
And then at some point, obviously, with the internet, and I don't know what really caused the downfall of local papers, but then your patch enlarged all of a sudden.
It did, yes. In 2007 or 8, I think it was, the company consolidated all staff.
Yeah.
So instead of each newspaper having its own pool of reporters, photographers and sub-editors, a lot of people got made redundant. A lot of buildings got, the lease was given up, and Uxbridge, the Gazette office was above and behind where W.H. Smith's is.
Yeah.
So you'd have to go to Baker's Yard where the buses are.
Yeah.
Go in. I think it still says Gazette House above the door.
Okay.
Even though there's not been a newspaper in there for 5-6 years.
Yeah.
I think it's the local food bank now.
Okay. That's interesting.
I think I've not actually walked past Gazette House recently, but it was a food bank at some point.
Yeah.
So yeah, instead of covering, the company had 21 photographers and I don't know how many reporters. But a streamlining took place, and the Uxbridge office became the West London hub for editorial. 14 photographers got made redundant. Luckily, I was one of the 7 that stayed.
Okay.
And so instead of just travelling around the London Borough of Hillingdon, I then had my patch widened to the whole of West London, North Surrey and South Bucks.
Wow.
So I could, in a working day, leave Uxbridge, go to Neasden, go to Ealing, and then find myself going to Chesham or Amersham.
Oh wow! So
a very large patch.
Huge patch. Yeah.
It was a big increase in area covered, but it made it more. It made it more varied and full of variety. The difference between spending a couple of hours in Neasden and then getting on the A40 and then going out and spending a couple of hours in Amersham, worlds apart. Yeah, worlds apart. So it was a very interesting time to work.
What do you think caused the downfall of local newspapers? Is it the internet and classified ads and things going online, or is there something else that caused it?
Back in the early 2000s, I personally think the company weren't quick enough to get the newspaper online. I think they missed the boat, and they never recovered from that. And the next decade, they tried their hardest with the various newspaper titles, all had their own websites, but really, I think they mishandled it, and the company never recovered from the loss they took to web-based news. Even making the newspaper free didn't really work.
I suppose Facebook and the internet is our main source of information now. It's a shame, but there's not a lot of journalism involved in Facebook, I wouldn't have thought.
I don't really have a Facebook account. I did have one. I shut it down last November
Okay.
And I've not missed it in the slightest. My social media is Twitter, Instagram, and Flickr.
Yeah.
I also have a few videos on a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know what you mean. There's a lot of people who are happy to take the words of an unverified source on the internet as the truth, and are quite happy to live in a fantasy world. To be honest, I think more than ever in the last year of the pandemic, that has really been apparent. People are happy to just read and listen to the words of a fantasist and take it as reality because it suits their own mind.
So, as you moved away from the Gazette, obviously your hobby was behind the scenes all the time, I guess, of old analog cameras.
Yes, I have quite a stable of cameras from the 20th century, the oldest being a Kodak Vest Pocket Autographic. It was made in 1914.
Oh, wow.
So I've got cameras going from 1914 all the way up to the 1990s.
See, in my head, my vision of an old camera is those sort of guys with the top hats and bellows cameras. And then we were chatting earlier about the way they used to expose the films there was no shutter, was there? No shutter control.
No, the earliest cameras back in the Victorian days, everybody's got that image in their mind of the Victorian photographer. So a big camera like that with the bellows in the middle that you can open and close like that.
Yeah.
And you stand at the back end with a cloth over your head so you can focus on the glass screen.
Yeah.
And then back in the day, lenses wouldn't really come with shutters as they were in modern cameras.
Okay.
So when you're ready to take a photo, if your lens was there, you'd physically have to cover the glass of the lens, expose the film, and then uncover the lens.
Yeah.
And quite often back in the day, you'd be looking at 10, 30 seconds a minute of exposure. So you'd uncover the lens, count your exposure time, cover it back up again. As opposed to these days, you just press a button and the shutter goes and you get the picture.
So you were limited to things that were static. You couldn't be covering a football match.
No. Oh, there is somebody who uses I think it's a 1940s camera that makes negatives that are 5 by 4 inches, who's covering Formula One.
Right.
I forget his name, but if you Googled Formula One large format photography, I don't doubt you'd get it. And there's also somebody who has a similar camera that covers White House press conferences.
Okay.
And he's, I've seen a few videos of him where everybody's got their state-of-the-art Nikon and Canon digital camera. They're going, he's got this big thing like that, and he's looking into it. And he presses the button, and he takes this. The film comes in sheets, so you come to a carrier.
Yeah.
Take the carrier out, turn it over, and put it back in. You get each carrier has 2 sheets of film.
Oh, I
So
see.
you take a photograph, pull the carrier out, turn it over, put it back in again, take his second picture. So yeah, he looks like he owns the press conference in terms of media, because everyone's just clicking away with their digitals, and he's just taking it easy with a camera that's almost 100 years old.
Yeah, that's amazing. But I mean, if you go to a charity shop now, some of those cameras people don't tend to even look at, do they? But you're obviously buying them up and are you doing them up and making them work and things.
I've got to be honest, I don't have great camera technician skills, so there's a major problem.
Yeah.
I'm not your man, but I can clean them up if they're a bit old and tired.
Yeah.
Clean them up, and if they don't need any great mechanical work doing to them, I can coax images out of them very much. Yes.
And you have your own darkroom as well.
Yes, I have a darkroom where I develop film, print photographs. I have a body of work that I've made with cyanotypes, which is an 1850 photographic process.
Okay.
So that's
interesting.
something I do. It's the traditional way of making a cyanotype would be to coat paper, watercolor paper, with the cyanotype solution, and when it's dry, you would put things like lace, feathers, leaves on top of it under
Yeah.
a piece of glass and leave it in the sun, and that would produce a photographic image. I've extended that a little bit by making negatives by printing out onto acetate, which I then put onto the cyanotype paper. So I'm making it's a hybrid photographic process whereby I create an image using a digital camera, make that into a negative, print it out onto acetate, and then make a photograph using an 1850s photographic process. So it's a melding of digital and 21st century digital and 18th century analog photographic processes.
So kind of like an art. I mean, it's almost like art, isn't it, in a way? You're making a painting in a way.
Yeah,
but,
you can get some very painterly photographic images.
Yeah. There's a big trend right now, isn't there, for dark rooms to be sustainable? Because I know there's some nasty chemicals and things involved with dark rooms and things.
Yes, you're not really meant to put darkroom chemicals down the drain. No. You're supposed to take them to your local civic amenity centre where they can be disposed of properly.
Yeah.
But through Twitter and Instagram, I am in touch with a lot of film photographers globally, and sustainability and ecology is very big at the moment. And I'm investigating using a substance called caffeinol to develop my films, which is made up of coffee, vitamin C powder, iodized salt, and soda crystals. And you mix that in the right proportion with the right amount of water. Yeah, that will develop your film in a completely ecologically friendly way. Wow. When you're done, you can just pour the caffeinol mix down the sink, and it's completely ecologically fine. So that is the way forward for my darkroom, the ecological side.
Who finds these things out? Who finds out that you need vitamin C in this mix?
I really don't know who first investigated coffee and vitamin C and soda crystals and thought, well, that might make a developer. I don't know. I know people who are doing it with tea as well.
Right.
I also have a connection with somebody they live in Folkestone, and she has a very green darkroom, and she's making developer out of seaweed.
Right.
She's something I've yet to try.
Yeah.
But next time I'm at the beach, I'll collect some and see what I can get.
Is it getting hard to find old ingredients and old film to use in analog cameras now?
A lot of the traditional firms that were making film back in the 90s have either stopped making film entirely or have cut their range back. Agfa no longer make film at all. Kodak are still going strong in America. Rochester, New York is where their main base is.
Yeah.
Fujifilm are still making some emulsions, but they have closed production lines a few times recently. Ilford, I have to say, is still going strong. Used to be based in Ilford in East London.
Oh, right, that's what they're called, Ilford.
That's why they have the name Ilford, yes.
Yes.
A few years ago, they outgrew their Ilford premises and moved to Moberly, which is in the north.
Okay.
Yorkshire. Yeah. It's very north, and they've got a massive production line there, and they make 6 different types of film, I think, all black and white. I've traditionally been using Ilford film since I became a photographer in 1987. So generally speaking, if I'm looking to buy black and white film, I will buy Ilford.
Yeah.
Long-term brand loyalty. And also, they're a British company.
Yeah.
I like to buy British.
What's your sort of everyday camera that you would take out nowadays? Obviously, you've got digital cameras as well.
If I was going to work, I would use a Nikon D810 with a selection of fine lenses.
Okay.
When I'm a commercial photographer, my clients want me to produce the best quality images I can, high resolution, in focus, well color balanced, just as perfect as they can be. So as an antidote to that, when I'm not at work, my hobby is photography, and I use the aforementioned 20th century cameras to just muck about with. I've got cameras. In fact, if you want, I've got one on me.
Yeah, let's have a look. I'll show you your Twitter page while we're finding those, which is this one here. There's obviously lots of information about your cameras and things.
In fact, those 3 pictures there, I tweeted that this morning as I was loading up the camera I'm holding now. So that's the camera you're...
Ah, all right. This is the camera you're showing us now.
Yes, this is...
What sort of age is this one?
It's 1960s.
Ah, so not too old. I mean, the sort of camera your dad might have or something.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
There you go. So that's an Agfa Super Isolate 35mm rangefinder. And do you mind if I take your photo?
Go on, yes.
Excuse me, getting my spectacles on. My I haven't got a chance of reading this display of a camera without spectacles these days.
Ah, so the light meter comes out now.
Yes, I'm big into 20th century cameras, but I'm also very much into electronic light meters because it's just more convenient.
Yeah, and probably more accurate than a needle that waves around.
Yes, so I'll just quickly make a light meter reading.
So in here we're showing, how do you measure light?
Well, the film speed, I'm going to get technical now.
Yeah.
Excuse me if you're not into photography.
All right.
I'm using Ilford, as I've already mentioned. Ilford are my go-to film manufacturer. I'm using Kentmere 400.
Okay.
Which is one of, like I've said, I think they make 7 or 8 different types of film. Kentmere 400, which is a 400 ISO film. So my light meter there, you can see when I press the ISO button, 400 ISO.
Yeah.
And that's how sensitive the film is. And then I hold Steve, if I hold the light meter out to you.
Yeah.
Just make sure the camera
saying
can see.
2.8, I think, at the moment.
Yeah, that's aperture is 2.8.
Yeah.
And a 60th of a second.
Ah, so it even tells you what settings to use.
Yes, that's exactly.
You're not measuring actual, is there a unit of light or
There's 2 different ways of measuring light. You can do it using the exposure triangle of ISO, shutter speed, and aperture.
Yeah.
The other one is an exposure index, which starts off at 0 and makes incrementally steps up. I only use the exposure triangle. I don't use the index.
Yeah.
One of the downsides of vintage cameras is they don't have the full range of settings available to modern cameras.
Yeah.
And so the 2.8 aperture, my light meter tells me, isn't available.
Ah, right.
On this camera. 3.5 is the fastest aperture.
Yeah.
So I don't know if how well you can see that.
Oh, yeah.
The top of the lens there is the camera settings of aperture and shutter speed. So I will set the camera to as close to the settings as the light meter told me to.
This is a big way out from using an iPhone, isn't it? To take a picture, where it's like just literally point and shoot nowadays. But this is going back to proper photography.
Just as our forefathers would have done it. This camera is a rangefinder camera, which means you can focus it.
Ah.
Whereas a lot of cameras from this era didn't have any focusing mechanism. You just had to look at your subject, work out or guess how far you were away, and then set the distance on the lens. Whereas I can look through this camera and focus.
Yeah.
And then take a picture. I've only bought this camera last week, so that's why my thumb's all over the place. I can't remember the layout of the controls.
Excellent.
Yeah. Did you hear that?
I did hear that. Yep, yeah.
I'll take another one.
And of course, you won't get the results until they've been developed, which is amazing.
I'll probably develop this roll this weekend.
Okay.
Because it's a brand new camera. This is the first time I've shot it. This is a test roll just to make sure there's no light leaks or anything like that. So I'm keen to get this roll developed as quickly as possible, just so I can work out whether the camera's a runner or not.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's do another one.
Okay. Here we are.
There you go. That's the sound of the shutter, and this is the sound of the wind on.
Yes. No auto wind, just manual. Manual wind.
Manual, yes. No batteries.
And can you do double exposure on that one if you wanted to, or would it not let you?
Weirdly, I've been shooting this morning for the first time, so it's brand new to me. Weirdly, there's a lock. When you take a photograph, you wind it on.
Yeah.
And you can't then wind it on. Sorry, how am I going to say this?
I see what you mean. You can't then release the shutter again.
Yes.
Once before
so
it's been
got
wound
a double
on.
explosion lock.
Yeah.
So every time you take a picture, you can't take another picture, you've wound it on.
Yeah.
So there's no chance of getting a double exposure. But I've discovered you can wind it on and wind it on without taking the picture. It doesn't lock between. So I've lost a few frames today by winding on without realising I hadn't taken a picture. So you'd think there'd be as well as the double exposure lock, there'd also be a lock that stopped you wasting a frame.
Yeah.
But no.
What's your sort of method? Do you leave a camera wound on, or do you leave a camera waiting to take a picture?
I don't know what the recommended advice is. I've never spoken to a camera expert about that, a camera technician, I should say. My personal view is I don't wind it on unless I'm going to take a photo. Okay. When you wind it on, you're tensioning a spring.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to me. If you wind it on and put it back in the cupboard and you leave it for a week, the spring is tensioned that whole time, and that can only be bad for the spring.
Yeah.
So without having any proper advice from somebody, it makes sense not to store a camera with the spring tension.
Yeah. Is there a sort of, if we wanted to get into this sort of photography, is there a sort of beginner's model that we could look out for on eBay or in the charity shops? What would be a sort of good starting point for someone thinking, I quite fancy getting into analog photography? And things to check for, I suppose. I mean, obviously you take a chance when you buy a camera from the charity shop.
You do.
But it might not be working. But I guess
Same
there's
as
some
eBay.
tests. Yeah, you probably do some tests in the shop just to make sure it actually clicks and winds on,
I'd
perhaps.
rather buy one from a charity shop than eBay because you can hold it and get a hands-on experience of it.
Yeah.
So, but there are many very basic 35mm cameras that you could buy.
Yeah.
Ricoh, Pentax, Canon, Nikon.
Yeah.
These are all
brands
that back in the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, all made cheap but reliable entry-level single lens reflex cameras. And you can look on eBay, you can look in charity shops. A lot of there's a lot of camera shops that deal in used vintage cameras.
Yeah.
If you went to an actual shop, you'd be looking to pay more than on eBay, for example. But you'd be getting something that had been serviced and would come with a warranty as well. So I think quite often going to a shop and paying a little bit more than something dodgy off eBay will pay in the long run because you've got comeback. You've also got a guarantee that it's going to work, whereas you could buy something off eBay and it'd turn up and it'd be in several bits. Yeah.
And can you get film easily now? I suppose it's like a revival of vinyl in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, a lot of people do put a parallel on the revival of analog photography and the revival of vinyl. Yes, you can. There's a website I'd like to reference. They're not Uxbridge based, but they're close. They're based in High Wycombe. A company called Analogue Wonderland. And they have over 200 different films available to buy. So the analog photography is a growing and vibrant place at the moment.
Yeah. Analog Wonderland sounds great. Yeah. Their shop, can you walk in there, or is it just an online thing?
They just moved to new premises in the last week, funny enough. They're expanding. They're getting a lab in. So as well as selling film, they're going to be providing their customers with somewhere to get the film developed and printed. I would imagine the enlarged premises will also provide a customer service counter for you to go in and buy. Obviously, the last 18 months, it's all been about postal sales, hasn't it?
Yeah. I suppose there must then be a revival if someone's starting a business now selling film and doing developing. There must be some money in it, I guess.
Yeah,
somewhere.
Yeah, analog photography.
For hobbyists.
Analog photography is a very big thing.
Yeah.
You just have to look on Twitter and Instagram.
Yeah.
And Flickr just to see that, yeah, it is something that's very popular. I even know of people who are shooting film commercially now, getting paid to shoot film instead of a digital camera, which would be very nice. I'd love somebody to pay me to shoot film.
Do a wedding or something in analog.
It's a thing, definitely. I know Rachel Brewster is a photographer from Liverpool, and she offers a hybrid wedding package, digital and film.
Yeah.
So it's definitely something that goes on.
Yeah.
I used to shoot weddings on film back in the early 2000s.
Must be a stressful thing doing a wedding, I'd imagine, as a photographer, especially on analog cameras. You must have two, surely.
Yeah, it's nice whether you're shooting film or digital. Having two cameras is nice because you've got two different lenses.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah,
go from that one to that one, back to that one again.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've always had a two camera bag.
Yeah,
whatever I've been doing, but yeah, back in the day, in the early 90s, there was no such thing as digital, so you just had to use film. There was no alternative.
Yeah,
and so yeah, I've shot weddings on film 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
And then I got a digital camera. I couldn't wait to go digital for weddings because, you know, I didn't have to buy film. I didn't have to pay for film to be processed, printed, scanned. And so it really vastly increased my profit margin.
Yeah, of course, yeah. There's so many more shots, I suppose, as well, to choose from.
Yes, although the big takeaway I would give anybody is when you're taking photographs, quality is more important than quantity.
Yes, yeah.
There's nothing worse than having, this is something I've managed to avoid myself, but I've seen other people do it, coming back from a shoot and having 800 pictures and finding that you've got 30 pictures of the same thing, having to go through 30 pictures to find one or two for the edit. That's really the wrong way to do it. Be confident in your abilities and shoot less, but aim for a higher quality shoot.
Yeah,
definitely.
There's an art with a wedding, I think, of staying out of the way as well. We've been to some weddings where the photographer's almost got in the way of the proceedings, and you think, oh crikey, this is almost embarrassing if the photographer's walking down the aisle as the poor priest is trying to give a sermon. It's like, oh, this is a bit odd.
Well, yeah. You have to be a bit of a social chameleon as a photographer.
Yeah.
You have to be able to blend in. When I worked for the Gazette, I'd have to be able to strike up a rapport instantly wherever I went. And I didn't know for one day to the next, I'd have to deal with a head teacher. Then I might have to go to an infant school and deal with 6-year-olds, the mayor.
Yeah.
Local politicians, MPs, people who've been bereaved, people who've just won the lottery.
Oh right, of course, yeah.
Yeah, every aspect of life I encountered as a news photographer, and you have to strike up a rapport instantly. You have to be very much a people person, and when you're at an event, you have to be a social chameleon and just not be seen.
Yeah,
weddings. Award ceremonies,
I suppose,
anything like that. Yeah, you have to be there, but not be there. And I think shooting weddings on film, I think the biggest faux pas was during the exchange of the vows, taking the last picture on the roll, my camera would automatically rewind. So everything's all nice and quiet and lovey-dovey as the couple hold hands and stare into each other's eyes, and then there'd be that's 36 frames get wound back into the canister. I did that a few times. I did feel a bit sheepish.
Yeah. Oh wow.
But back in the day, pre-digital wedding photography, everybody knows that there comes a point when you've got to rewind the film.
Yeah.
So you just have to sort of try and do it during the loud bit. When people are singing a hymn, for example.
Yes. Well, anybody want to get in touch with you or see some of the work you do? You're on Twitter at Toby V Photo.
That's me, yeah.
Do you want to give us your Instagram
It's
as
the
well.
same.
'Cause that's,
Twitter.
Toby V Photo is all the same.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Twitter, Instagram, and Flickr is at Toby V Photo.
There's some real variety of pictures in here. I have to
Not
scroll
all these
down.
pictures are mine, I should add. Some of these are... Oh, that's one of my cameras.
Yeah.
That film there, that Red Eye, that's me, Red Eye Red Scale. Talking of film, I last summer, for something to do to try and earn a bit of money whilst I was not working during lockdown,
Yeah.
I started a boutique film company, which is something that has gone very well. Yeah.
Make your own film.
I buy film
Yeah.
in and I do something special to it in the darkroom.
Okay.
I rebrand it by putting a sticker around the cassette and then I sell it on.
So a secret process happens in the darkroom.
Yes.
And then you go niche red eye film.
Yeah. Red eye is it's a technique in where you get color negative film and you turn it over so you're shooting through the wrong side. When color film is made, red, yellow, and blue dyes are added to the light sensitive emulsion to get the colors.
Yeah.
Because red is a very strong and dominant color, you get your film base, and then the red dye, the green dye, and the blue dye is laid down. So it's like a layer cake.
Yeah.
If you turn the film over and shoot through the back of the film, you get the red first, not last. So red scale gets its name from the fact that when you shoot this backwards, the red becomes a very dominant factor. Basically that's what I'm doing in the darkroom. I'm pulling the film out of the cassette, cutting it off, turning it over, sticking it back down with some masking tape, winding it back in again. And it's as simple as that in terms of production. And then I've had some success selling it on.
So where can we buy that?
If you go to Instagram or Twitter and you look up Red Eye, Red Scale, there is examples of the work taken by me.
Okay.
Also, I've been in the last few weeks posting images that my clients, people who bought the film and shot the film, I'm posting user images at the moment as well. But if you go to Instagram or Twitter, search for Red Eye Red Scale.
Yeah.
You can then in the Red Eye Red Scale bio, there'll be a link to take you to my big cartel shop, where you will not be able to buy any because I've just sold out. I'm very glad to say. There's a restock coming soon. I need to. So there's some of my customers' pictures there. So you see the top left picture of that ruined church.
Yeah.
That's got quite a red, sort of yellowy hue.
Yeah.
So this is a bit photographically technical. If you overexpose the film, you start off by getting the nice reds. Like that's a classic example of Red Eye the butterfly. If you start off overexposing the film, you get really nice big deep reds and blacks, very contrasty. Yeah. And as you overexpose more and more, allow more and more light to penetrate the film, you burn through the reds and you get very vintage feeling yellows and greens, almost like it's a film that was shot in the 1950s or 60s and the colours have gone a bit funny. But one thing about the red scale that I've always enjoyed is you never know really how the overexposure is going to affect the final image. So you can go from, as I said, the really dark black and red contrasty images with a small amount of overexposure to yellows and greens that are just really nice and muted and subtle with a very dated feel.
Yeah. That's
One
lovely.
of my clients has even managed to get some of these pictures looking fluorescent yellow, which I really don't know how.
Yeah, that butterfly is amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So yes, you can search Red Eye Red Scale on Instagram or Twitter. Click the link in the bio and it'll take you through to my big cartel site where, as I say at the moment, I'm sold out, but there will be a restock coming soon. It's been a very big success.
Oh, good.
And, yeah. the round 2 is inevitable.
Yeah, coming soon.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Well, thank you very much for coming in today. We've learned a lot about your work on the Uxbridge Gazette and also analog photography, which, analog photography to me just means those guys with top hats and that amazing, probably highly flammable, would it be magnesium they would have been using for a flash?
Flashes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, no electronic flash. It would be a powder made of magnesium and gunpowder.
Oh, God.
And they'd have it imagine the shape of a broom.
Yeah.
Upside down. So instead of the head with bristles, there'd be a tray. And you put the powder into the tray, hold it aloft, and your assistant would apply a naked flame, and you go, that flash would light the photograph. So
I imagine a few cases of lighting the room as well.
Yep, singeing your fingertips, setting your hair on fire, your waistcoat on fire, your top hat on fire.
You haven't gone so far as using that as your analog flash source?
I'm not sure it would be ecologically viable.
No. So
going down the route of sustainable darkrooms and sustainable photography in general, it's not something I feel.
I'm not sure you get hold of magnesium and gunpowder these days either. A bit tricky.
It'd probably be illegal, wouldn't it?
Maybe. Right, as we say, you can connect with Toby on Twitter. He is Toby V Photo, and some very interesting pictures on there. And also,
that photograph you're looking at now, that is the ingredients that I've been using in an attempt to make a more sustainable darkroom.
Yeah.
So I'm using instead of a traditional chemical developer, I'm using something called caffeinol, which is made from mixing up coffee powder, soda crystals, iodized salt, and vitamin C powder. And I did it a couple of days ago, and it worked an absolute treat. It looks disgusting. It smells pretty foul, but it's entirely organic. And whereas a traditional chemical developer, I would have had to taken away and dispose of in a responsible fashion.
Yes, of course.
Those 4 ingredients, diluted with water, are perfectly fine to just tip down your sink when you have finished developing. So it's brilliant. It's definitely the way forward for me.
Yeah, with darkrooms, that's the trend to go more sustainable.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much. And
it's been a pleasure.
I know you're going through a bit of a move at the moment, so good luck with that, moving from Uxbridge up to Wales.
Yes.
You've had a very exciting few years on a houseboat in Uxbridge, which
the last 7.5 years, my family have lived on the canal just near the Swan and Bottle.
Oh, pole position in Uxbridge on the canal.
It's great. You can be at Uxbridge train station in 10-15 minutes stroll. But it's outside. I can be in Uxbridge Tesco's in 5 minutes. So it's great for shopping, great for getting into town. But when I'm on the boat, it feels like you're in the country.
I bet, yeah.
And so it's the best of both worlds. After having lived and worked in Uxbridge since 2002, I'm giving up. I'm leaving the city and I'm relocating to Wales for a country life.
Yeah. There should be a TV programme following you. See how you get on.
I should do a blog.
Definitely, yes. Well, by all means, come again and tell us about Wales in a few months' time or whatever when you're back.
Nice.
And it's great to meet you. Thanks, Toby.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.